You know, I actually didn't want to make a video about this, but I got so riled up by the targeting of PewDiePie, I said, you know what, let's talk about the problem of how the left overlooks their own racism and anti-Semitism and overt white supremacy because they're so morally superior to everybody. They think they're so much better than everybody. And I'm talking about the colloquial tribal left, because my politics, as many of you know, are on the left. But what frustrates me is the utter hypocrisy. I also find it funny how people like to say things like, Tim is a conservative because of his videos. And I'm like, I wonder if you actually watch the videos, because they don't seem to understand. Simply because there is a subject matter that conservatives tend to talk about, doesn't mean that by talking about it, you are conservative. No, I actually am focused on certain issues like foreign policy and finance. And these are things the left doesn't really talk about that often, right? And cultural issues they're on the wrong side of. Don't get me, you know. So here I find myself concerned about the issues of the government, financial issues and policy, and foreign policy. The left doesn't really talk about foreign policy all that much, and then they engage in authoritarian behaviors. More importantly, I will tell you exactly why I am calling out the left as often as I do. This right here. Can you read that? First time Women's March leaders met, two leaders asserted anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. Yes, I know all about this. I have hung out with these people. I hear the racism they say. There's one guy who's like a reporter from Occupy Wall Street who's one of the most racist people I've ever had the displeasure of talking to, and I really don't like racists. So what ends up happening? I say, dude, you're a liar and a hypocrite. And they rally all their Antifa friends and boast about how as white progressives, they're the saviors of all the poor minorities. Let's read this story. The first time the leadership of the Women's March met, two of its leaders, Tamika Mallory and Carmen Perez, allegedly promulgated such nasty anti-Semitism that according to two sources for Tablet magazine, the incident was buried for 2 years and is only now surfacing. Sources who attended the meeting on November 12, 2016, said Perez and Mallory allegedly stated that Jews had a special collective responsibility as exploiters of black and brown people, and allegedly added that Jews were leaders of the American slave trade. As Liam McSweeney and Jacob Siegel write in Tablet, these are canards popularized by the secret relationship between black and Jews, a book published by Louis Farrakhan's Nation of Islam, the Bible of the New Anti-Semitism. According to Henry Louis Gates Jr., who noted in 1992, among significant sectors of the black community, this brief has become a credo of a new philosophy of black self-affirmation. McSweeney and Siegel note that Mallory and co-leader Bob Bland deny to this day that such rhetoric was used. Bland insisted there was a particular conversation around how white women had centered themselves, and also around the dynamics of racial justice and why it was essential that racial justice be part of the women's rights conversation. While Mallory said to Tablet, Carmen and I were very clear at that first meeting that we would not take on roles as workers or staff, but that we had to be in a leadership position in order for us to engage in the march. Other than that, there was no particular conversation about Jewish women or any particular group of people. I'm not surprised they deny it, but they've been called out by Alyssa Milano, by Deborah Messing, and now we have sources on the record with Tablet that they were actually engaging in anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. I'll tell you what bothers me so much. The fringe right anti-Semites are few and far between. The actual fringe far-right white supremacist types, there's a tiny minority of them. Among the KKK, it's something like 3,000, and the largest estimate that has been put together is something like 10,000 out of 300 and some odd million people in this country. And not just that, including Europe too, it is a tiny, tiny minority. You may argue that they're growing, sure, whatever, but the point is they're small. The Women's March is mainstream. It is mainstream. Millions of women marched for this group, whose leadership are anti-Semites, are racist bigots. And when I say literally, we can point to what they've done, who they support, and what they believe, the left ignores it. How many times did conservatives say, dude, you got wolves in the henhouse? And the left went, no, those are just right-wing liars. Let's carry on. Now you got egg on your face. Now you've got Alyssa Milano, who was on the left, who challenged Brett Kavanaugh. She's got to wipe that egg off. And I got nothing but respect for her for doing so. Because she came out, it's actually really funny. Laura Loomer goes to Politicon, asks a question, saying Linda Sarsour supports Sharia law. Do you have anything to say about that? Alyssa Milano says, no, she doesn't. Thank you for your question. And then it was only a few days later, Alyssa Milano comes out and says, I am disavowing these people. I think the reality is the left insulates itself from a lot of these stories. You've got wolves in the henhouse, and they don't want to hear it because it's damaging to their tribe. And as collectivists, well, any one of these people being problematic makes the entire group problematic. But what I find is, people on the left like to call people on the right grifters. They exaggerate. They go too far. They call everyone a grifter. No, come on, dude. Obviously, people on the right actually believe what they say. Seriously. And there are people on the left who do the same thing as well. But I look at these people, the anti-Semites within the Women's March, and I say, yeah, total grifters. Ideologues, grifters as well. The people, and I'm not talking about the anti-Semites. I'm not talking about Linda Sarsour and Tamika Mallory. I'm talking about the people who knew what happened and hushed it up because they were making money and gaining power. And that's a huge problem. Notch, the game developer, said something interesting. He said he believes the left has become evil. Well, I believe that there are elements of the left that are being taken over by evil. I'm willing to call them out and always have been. But he made another point. If you follow evil for the principle of it, for whatever, you are evil too. And when we learn that there are people within the Women's March who knew full well that they were being organized and led by anti-Semites, by racists, and they stuck with it, yeah, you got a serious problem. And this is what really bothers me. There are people on the left who just feel like, oh, the right is attacking them, therefore it must be lies. Fox News must be lies. You look at any objective group of journalists who are objective, and they're rare. People have criticized me saying, I don't trust NewsGuard because they give Vox a good rating. Yeah, well, they give the Daily Wire a good rating. They give the Daily Caller a good rating. They give Fox News a good rating. Okay? If they're willing to say, this is good information, this is factually correct, but it's biased on both sides, I'll respect that. I will. But what ends up happening is you get people on the left who say, I'm not going to believe it because the Daily Wire is a tabloid of fake news. The Daily Wire is accurate, but partisan for sure, just like Huffington Post or any other site is. Well, let's read on. Let's read on. They say, multiple sources confirmed the incident to tablet. There were other alleged incidents of anti-Semitism. Evie Harmon, who was the Women's March co-global coordinator with Brianne Butler, recalled an incident in January 2017 at a meeting of the leaders of the Women's March at Mallory's apartment. Tablet writes, in attendance were Mallory, Evie Harmon, Brianne Butler, Vanessa Rubel, Cassidy Fendley, Carmen Perez, and Linda Sarsour. She said, we sat in that room for hours. Tamika told us that the problem was that there were 5 white women in the room and only 3 women of color, and that she didn't trust white women. Racist. Especially white women from the South. Racist and geographist? At that point, I kind of tuned out because I was so used to hearing this type of talk from Tamika. But then I noticed the energy in the room had changed. I suddenly realized that Tamika and Carmen were facing Vanessa, who was sitting on a couch, and berating her. But it wasn't about her being white, it was about her being Jewish. Your people this, your people that. I was raised in the South, and the language that was used is language that I'm very used to hearing in rural South Carolina. Just instead of against black people, against Jewish people. They even said to her, your people hold all the wealth. You could hear a pin drop, it was awful. And they said this was in January of 2017. Quite literally, a group of racist anti-Semites organizing with the Women's March for years at the top. And what did the left do? Nothing. And you know what it feels like to me, sitting in this room on the left, looking at these people saying, you realize you are literally the Nazis. And they go, oh, shut up. You're just a right-wing bigot. And here we have a story. These women knew what Tamika and Carmen were saying. Listen to this. Your people this, your people that. They knew. And this was almost 2 years ago they knew. And what did they do about it? Did anyone come out and say the Women's March leaders are extremely anti-Semitic conspiracy theorists, not too dissimilar to these fringe far-right white nationalist types? Did they? No, they didn't. I have to wonder then. When you look at Antifa out in the streets smashing things, when you look at people showing up to protest with little pink hats on, symbols of the Women's March, in agreement with this ideology, following behind literal anti-Semitic conspiracy theorists who target Jewish women, who support the violence of Antifa, I have to wonder who the real Nazis are. Okay? Because they look at conservatives, Trump supporters, and say, y'all are Nazis. And I say, that's interesting. They support Israel. They support the Jewish community. That's really strange that you would do that. They support free speech and free expression. And these people exist on the left for sure. But look at those following that piper. Tamika Mallory, Carmen Perez, marching forward with their pipe, leading all of the blind liberals down a path of anti-Semitism. And who did anything about it? This is the stuff that makes me so So furious, absolutely furious. I am sick to my stomach of the extreme racists on the left who get away with it for years. You can point to the right. You can point to the fringe white supremacist types who say anti-Semitic things all day and night. You know why? They say it. They say what they believe. They don't hide it. But then you can look at what these people do in private, and they know they will never tell anyone their secret agenda, what they really believe. In private, they will. And the worst part about it, and what makes me absolutely disgusted, is that people at the top in the Women's March organization knew full well what they were supporting and said, you know what, we're gonna do it anyway. Yeah, that's what I would call evil. I guess I'd have to agree with Notch. If you are willing to lead millions of people in a march, standing behind overt anti-Semites, overt conspiracy theorists, who are basically no better than neo-Nazis, I have to imagine that if you do that, you're evil. You are. You don't care about what's right. You don't care that you are holding onto the ideology of those you claim to be criticizing. You know what I think it is? I sometimes make the joke that the Nazis realized they couldn't win against the left, so they infiltrated the left itself and started pushing for this identitarianism to create racial consciousness. And it sucks. It does. Because the left was once the people who were fighting for merit. The left championed the idea that we would judge someone based on the content of their character, not the color of their skin. And now we hear a story that these people in the Women's March were berating a Jewish woman. And did anybody stand up and do anything about it? Did anybody come out and say, I refuse? No. About 2 years later, Alyssa Milano realized what was going on and said something about it. So props to you, Alyssa, but not to these people. This makes me sick. And you know what? I've seen what these people say in private. I was at Occupy Wall Street. I've heard the things they say. It's not unique to them. And you want to wonder why I'm a centrist. This is why. Stick around. More videos to come.